Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Mrinmoy Pramanik. I teach comparative Indian language and literature at the University of Calcutta. Today we will discuss a module from Indian aesthetics, and this module is on Ganeshwara and his contribution to Indian aesthetics. In this module, we will discuss the life and times of Ganeshwara, and we'll also try to understand the philosophy and teachings of Ganeshwara as it emanates from his works. Ganeshwara is also known as Ganadeva, and he was one of the important saints, poets and philosophers of Maharashtra. He is considered to be the father of the Varkari movement in the tradition of Bhagavad Dharma in Maharashtra, and was succeeded by Namadeva and Ekhanatha. In him, one finds a rare combination of poetry, philosophy, and religious vision. The main works of Ganeshwara include Ganeshwari, Amritanu Baba, Changadeva Pashasti, Haripatha, Namana, and his abhangs of religious lyrics. Ganeshwari, in his most famous commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, and is also known by the name of Vavartha Deepika. The abhangs record primarily the serious outpointings of his devotional heart and give a glimpse of his moral teachings and yogic experiences. The Amritanu Baba has a unique position as it sets forth his philosophical vision prominently. Ganeshwara's contribution to Indian philosophy is his theory of Chid Vilas, or the play of the pure intelligent Atman. He critiques Sankara's idea of ignorance, although he stands on the same Advaitic ground, and this enables him to transform the conceptions of God, the individual self, and the world. The world is not created by Maya. According to Ganeshwara, it is the expression of infinite divine love and joy. The power of God's love is responsible for the appearance of the world. Love of God takes the center stage, of which his power and wisdom are aspects. Thus, Ganeshwara's philosophical vision leads the individual to the path of loving devotion and selfless activism. For Ganeshwara, love is not the quality of God, rather it is God himself, out of which emanates all creation and flows spontaneously. This infinite love is the deepest truth of the universe, and hence without it nothing can be created. Ganeshwara urges that in order to realize and feel this infinite love, akritrim bhakti, or natural devotion, is required. This vision of his infinite love made him proclaim, "The universe is my home, and I shall make all the worlds happy." Now let us talk about life and time of Ganeshwara. Ganeshwara was born in 1275 AD and died in 1296 AD. He had a very short lifespan of just about 21 years. Ganeshwara was written, Ganeshwara wrote in 1290 AD. Ganeshwara lived during the reign of King Ramadevarava of the Yadava dynasty, who was a great patron of learning and was also a devotee of the god of Pandharpur. In fact, the Yadava period was flourishing period for Maharashtra. Ganeshwara was the first to have written philosophical works in Marathi. Ganeshwara's spiritual lineage can be traced to two sources, the Nath cult and the Varkari or the Bhakti cult of Pandharpur. Ganeshwara's forefathers were all disciples of the Nath cult, and his brother Nivrittinath was the initiator of Ganeshwara. Prior to Ganeshwara, this spiritual wealth was restricted to the discipline and his guru, but Ganeshwara was interested in disseminating the knowledge among all. The Bhakti cult of Pandharpur was also of great importance, and Ganeshwara's contact with Namadeva influenced in shaping his philosophy, which became the foundation pillars of the Bhakti cult in Maharashtra. Ganeshwara and his brothers had to suffer great humiliation and were also excommunicated by the Orthodox Brahmins of Alandi. The reason was primarily due to the fact that Ganeshwara's father, Vithal Pant, who had become a sannyasi, renouncing all worldly comforts, was asked by spiritual teacher to lead a life of a householder. The entire family was harassed, and Vithal Pant with his children and wife Rukmini lived outside the town. It is recorded that both Ganeshwara's father and mother ended their lives by drowning in the holy river, and the children were left under the supervision of their elder brother Nivrittinath. After becoming a devotee of Vithal and a great apostle of the Varkari cult, Ganeshwara, along with Namadeva, visited the holy cities in northern India. They returned to Pandharpur, and Ganeshwara expressed his desire to enter Samadhi. In 1296 AD, Ganeshwara entered Samadhi and ended his life. We have thus discussed Ganeshwara's life and his times in this period of module. First, let us mention about his major works. In this module, we will discuss the major works of Ganeshwara, and a brief outline of each of the work will be given. The first work what we are going to discuss is Ganeshwari. It is considered to be the magnum opus coming from the mouth of Ganeshwara. This celebrated Marathi commentary on the Bhagavad Gita is also known by the names of Gyana Devi and Bhavartha Deepika. The striking feature of the work is the use of Marathi language instead of Sanskrit, because he desired to reach the common public devoid of any knowledge of Sanskrit. The work consists of about 9,000 OVs. It explains the meaning and significance of the Sanskrit text with the help of beautiful poetic language. A frequent imagery used in the Ganeshwari is of a loving and protective mother. God has been represented as a mother bird protecting her young ones. The philosophical message is that of the spirit of loving devotion or bhakti. Here Ganeshwara explains the theory of Chidvilas, according to which the universe is the expression of the absolute reality. Santarasa permeates the entire work, describing the characteristics of a true devotee. Ganeshwara says the former is united with God, but he also serves him. So he reinstates a union of the Bhakta with the Godhead, but there is also a separation from him. This is the secret of Bhakti Yoga, as explained in the work. He explains that the world is related to God in the same way as waves are related to the sea and limbs are linked with the body. He prescribes a life of detachment as opposed to enjoyment. But his philosophy never advocated desertion of life. Rather, it is one of life affirmation. Now, let us talk few things about his next work, Amritanu Baba. It is considered to be the greatest philosophical work written in Marathi language, the Amritanu Baba by Ganeshwara. The unique feature is the Ganeshwara did not rely upon the Upanishadic or Vedic teachings in writing this work. Rather, it is his own religious experiences and original philosophical insights that led to its writing. He expostulates his theory of Sfurtivada with logical acumen and great poetic mastery. A major part of the book deals with refuting the theory of ignorance or Ajnanavada. It reveals the secret of Akritrim Bhakti or natural devotion and is an important philosophical basis of Bhakti movement in Maharashtra. It describes the entire universe as a sport of the absolute. It never tries to hide reality but manifests it always. Now, the next work is Changadeva Pashisti. The work contains 65 verses addressed to Changadeva, a Hatha Yoga. Changadeva, realizing the futility of his yogic power once he came in contact with Ganeshwara, gave up his Hatha Yoga and became his disciple. This work gives a clear exposition of the philosophy of Ganeshwara. Next is Haripatha. The work consists of 28 avangs. Here Ganeshwara explains the importance of the name of the Lord. He states that the utterance of the name of the Lord is the only way to become one with Him. All the other rituals like sacrifices and yogic performances are of no use, since the devotee in reality is sustained only by the name of the Lord. The word Haripatha means remembering the name of the Lord Hari with complete devotion and affection. This work is natural outcome of the devotion described in the Amritanu Baba. Next is Namana. Namana contains 108 stanzas composed in the Ovic meter. The work is a hymn in praise of the Lord of the universe. Ganeshwara here describes the importance of the prayer, which he considers to be the supreme end in itself. Avangs written by Ganeshwara. There are about 900 avangs ascribed to Ganeshwara. These are mainly religious lyrics and their subject matter differ, ranging from the description of the lovely form of beetle, the sweetness of his name, to criticism of religious superstitions, the futility of asceticism, and the supremacy of devotion. The avangs describe the universe as nothing but his manifestation. In one of his avangs, Ganeshwara describes the whole universe as a lingam and describes it in a sublime way. His main idea is that God pervades the entire universe but transcends it as well. The Virahini Avangs describe the infinite love of the Lord, and the finite individual who has tasted it can never remain satisfied. This highest experience of divine love of the devotee is the theme of the Virahini Avangs. Here, the Lord of the universe is depicted as a lover and the woman devotee is the beloved. With this, we end our brief outline of the major works of Ganeshwara in this module. Now, let us talk about philosophy of Ganeshwara. In this module, we will try to discuss and understand the teachings and philosophy of Ganeshwara as it emanates from his various works, Ganeshwara and the nature of the world. Ganeshwara is a spiritual monist who considers ultimate reality as one and spiritual. Spirit is the pure consciousness. Sankara and Ganeshwara's ideas of the third knowledge, knower and known, differ greatly. According to him, this trade is the origin of the universe, and so their nature becomes important for philosophy. According to Sankara, the subjective and objective relation is illusory due to the avidya. The world is an appearance, but it has a reality for practical purpose, and that is Vyavaharik Satya. Ganeshwara admits the reality of the Brahman, but he rejects the falsity of the world. For him, it is always the natural expression of reality and is not avidya. He refutes the theory of Ajnana and Mayavada in both the Amritanu Baba and Changadeva Pashasti. In Indian philosophy, the concept of Maya is of utmost importance. The Upanishadic sages and their followers like Sankara had propounded the one absolute. The relation of this absolute to appearances is explained through the theory of Maya. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Brahman is considered to be the one without a second. Thus, the Brahman is the one reality while all the appearances are false. Ganeshwara counters saying that knowledge and ignorance are relative terms. Ultimate reality is pure knowledge. Thus, knowledge and ignorance are mere words without corresponding existence. He maintains that if the existence of ignorance is taken for granted before the rise of knowledge, that existence of ignorance does not become the object of hearing. The existence of ignorance is illusory, like the light of a glowworm. Ignorance might be there, but in reality there is no ignorance due to the final rise of knowledge. So ignorance of ajnana is not possible because it can neither coexist with knowledge nor can it exist independently. According to him, ignorance can never dwell in the Atman in its pure state. There might have been ignorance in the beginning, but the birth of knowledge puts an end to the ignorance. Thus, for Ganeshwara, the manifestation of the universe, the manifestation of universe is not due to ajnana, but is the very expression of pure intelligence. Now let us talk about world as the expression of divine love and joy. The thought, what is expressed, what is reflected in Ganeshwara's work. Ganeshwara, describing the Atman, says that the latter is beyond existence and non-existence. In any state, the omniscience of the Atman is not affected. The Vedas, the sun, even the mind cannot apprehend or imagine him. Ganeshwara agrees with Yagyavalkya when he says that self-consciousness is the ultimate fact of experience. The ultimate reality, your Atman, is self-conscious or swasamvedya. And his unity is not lost even if he comes to pervade the entire universe. The perfection of the Atman is such that it swallows the incomprehensibility as well as its oneness. The Atman, intoxicated with the spectacle of his creation, does not wish to see the same scenes again and again. Every moment he wears new apparels and expands himself and shines forth as the world. The Atman plays with himself by becoming the process of the universe. There are no differences when the Atman presents himself as the saint of the world or as the world that he sees, because it is nothing but the Atman himself in every respect. Ganeshwara expounds that there is no parallel to the sport of the Atman. The process of the universe is nothing but the expression of the Atman's love for himself. The whole universe, therefore, cannot be a glorious deception of avidya. Rather, it is the expression of the supreme love. Now let us talk about conception of the finite self or jiva. Ganeshwara's concept of the jiva is again different from those of other Indian philosophers. The nature of the finite self is not a mere appearance that ultimately dissolves into the absolute as the Advaitins like Sankara considers it to be. Ganeshwara has already described the absolute as splitting itself into subject and object in order to experience itself. The subjective aspect diversifies into innumerable finite selves through which the reality enjoys. Thus, Ganeshwara says that sound becomes the ear in order to hear itself, fragrance became the nose to smell itself, and so on. Hence the enjoyer and the enjoyed. Hence the enjoyer and the enjoyed are merged in one absolute. According to Ganeshwara, this merging does not pronounce extinction. It indicates that amidst this diversity, the unity is not broken. This implies that the finite self actually expresses the innate nature of the ultimate reality to manifest itself through duality. Thus, the relation between the finite self and the absolute is not imaginary, as Sankara believes, neither it is physical according to the vision of Ramanuja. Again, it is not of soul dependence as Madhava believes, nor fragmentary. As Nimbark explains, for Ganeshwara, this relation is more intimate and very natural. The existence of the finite self does not mean it is a degradation of reality. Rather, it subtly explicates that the reality determines itself in order to realize itself in various forms. Ganeshwara tries to reveal that the realization of God means the understanding of how God realizes himself through one's being, and this is the secret of natural devotion. Now let us come to the point of Bhakti. The idea of Bhakti forms one of the central ideas of Indian philosophy, especially the medieval Indian philosophy. It has played an important role in expounding both the religious and philosophical thought in India. It has also dominated the various schools of Indian philosophy and as such has been understood and explained in different ways by various thinkers. In the most common parlance, Bhakti has been understood as wholehearted devotion to God. This feeling of devotion is not objective but it is subjective. It has a long journey of devotion from the Vedic times to the sutras of Bhakti Mimamsa. In the Vedic age, primarily in the different hymns to Varuna and Indra, the readers can get a glimpse of complete devotion to these celestial powers. This can be traced as the first germs of bhakti as developed in later times. The word bhakti occurs in the Shweta Shetara Upanishad for the first time. The doctrine of grants and self-surrender is stressed here, and Brahman is described as of the nature of bliss and the source of all human joys in the Taittiriya and Brihadaranyaka Upanishads. The Bhagavad Gita explicitly foregrounds the doctrine of bhakti. It is the path of love and devotion with which everyone can approach the reality or the supreme being. Arjuna is even advised to set aside all other means of salvation and surrender himself to the Godhead with complete devotion. The supreme being resides in all beings and in all things and moves them so that he may be liberated from all sins by his divine grace. The Srimad Bhagavad underlines bhakti as the supreme goal of life. In the Narada Bhakti Sutras, bhakti has been defined as superior to action, knowledge and meditation. It is not a means to something else, but it is an end in itself. Again, the Bhakti Mimamsa Sutras explain bhakti as a rasa. It is kind of ullas of the mind and is eternal. It is the highest form of bliss. Now, if we turn to Ganeshwara, we will see that the understanding of bhakti as propounded in the Amritanu Baba has an intrinsic or absolute value. According to him, bhakti is the very essence of reality, which is self-experiencing or swasam vedya and self-illuminating or saprakasha. Ganeshwara maintains that this self-experience is nothing but love of God towards himself, and it forms the very core of divinity. Both the animate and the inanimate world is its manifestation. So bhakti becomes not an act of devotion, but it is the very nature of God. Ultimate reality, according to Ganeshwara, is pure consciousness, love and creative energy. The very nature of love is to express itself, and creation is that expression. Thus, love is a living spirit. Therefore, it is self-conscious and self-realizing. Ganeshwara explains that the finite self does not merely dwell in God or the Absolute as a separate self, rather the existence of that self. It means the very manifestation of God, whose primary essence is love. The experience of this love is the final fulfillment or the real aim of life. Bhakti, therefore, for Ganeshwara is the realization of divine love, and this realization leads to the culmination of spiritual experience. According to Ganeshwara's philosophy, the plurality of the world is not just an illusory appearance and hence to be paid little heed to. Rather, it is the manifestation of the playfulness of the Absolute. Hence, every object in this world is not a material for sensual enjoyment, but is the expression of divine love. Bhakti for Ganeshwara has the highest value both from the human standpoint and from the point of the absolute reality. Thus, Ganeshwara's idea of the Absolute evokes a feeling of intimacy and love. The difference between Ganeshwara and other Indian thinkers' view of Bhakti. Shankara understands Bhakti as the meditation upon one's supreme self. According to Ramanuja, Bhakti is a continuous meditation accompanied by the practice of 8 yoga processes. Vallabha explains Pusti Bhakti as the supreme one. It creates the desire of the attainment of God to the exclusion of every other thing. The fruit of this devotion gives the passport to the devotee to enter Golaka, where the latter can participate in the eternal sport of Krishna. All these thinkers consider Bhakti as the means to Mukti. Ganeshwara differs in his idea of Bhakti. According to him, Bhakti is not a means to Mukti, rather to reject the very idea of Mukti. In order to understand and realize Bhakti, Ganeshwara never thinks that it requires one to renounce this world. Bhakti for him is to be realized in this very world. This is primarily because the eternal play of God is not going on in some other plane. Rather, it is this very world which is the manifestation of God's eternal love and sport. Now let us talk about Ganeshwara's importance, Ganeshwara's significance in Indian philosophy. The dominant tone of Indian philosophy is idealistic, which has its source in the Upanishads. The cardinal principle of the idealism is the spirituality of the real. Yajnavalkya was one of the important teachers of idealistic monism, and later on Shankara accepted it and regarded the manifestation of the pure intelligence as illusion. Most of the thinkers advocated a renunciation of this world which is illusory. Ganeshwara has drawn importance of another aspect of the absolute when he says that the absolute is not mere knowledge and will, but it is also love. Hence, the absolute is the experience saturated with divine love. This idea of Ganeshwara describes a special place in Indian thought. Also, Ganeshwara explains that the world being a divine manifestation is not to be renounced. Rather, every act needs to be performed in an attitude of prayer. According to Ganeshwara, an ideal person is one whose heart is filled with divine love at the sight of any object of the world. Ganeshwara's contribution to Indian philosophical thought. Ganeshwara applied the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita to the concrete situation of his time and stressed on the importance of the triple marga in the life of the individual. Ganeshwara was able to blend karma marga, jnana marga and bhakti marga together into one yoga and reflected how the synthesis is possible. Ganeshwara's religion of love is again unique in its own way. He states that the ideal of this life is not moksha but bhakti, or the realization of the divine love which overflows everything. Our life is the medium through which divine love manifests itself and experiences itself. One can explicitly find Ganeshwara's influence on Namadeva, particularly the philosophy of Chidvilas. Eknath and Tukaram imbibed the teachings of Ganeshwara. Ganeshwara was able to blend bhakti, karma and jnana into an all-embracing philosophy. One of the unique aspects of his philosophy was the fact that he did not refute the existence of this world, and thus he had a positive outlook towards the objects of this world. This made him announce that God himself takes delight in manifesting and realizing himself through the varied and innumerable forms of existence. Hence, every form of existence becomes endowed at the same with the beauty of the infinite. The absolute is understood as an embodiment of divine love. Therefore, the way to know him is to love him. We have in this module successfully discussed the teachings and philosophy of Ganeshwara and have also explained it in the larger background of Indian philosophy. Now let us talk few words regarding Ganeshwara's importance in the context of Indian literature. As we mentioned earlier, that the first work and the other works of Ganeshwara, his philosophy, his teaching, his obangs, all were written not in Sanskrit language but were written in Marathi. And this is how we have observed the emergence of Bhasha, the practice of knowledge in Bhasha through the practice, through the creative writings and philosophical writings of Ganeshwara. And here lies the most significant role of Ganeshwara in the history of Indian literature. If we try to understand the greater span of Indian literature of medieval era, we must have to understand the theory of Bhakti and different philosophical currents which were happened in the space of Bhakti movement. And Ganeshwara is one among those philosophers who makes us understand the philosophy of medieval Indian Bhakti movement, Bhakti movement of medieval India, and through that we can understand the philosophical ground of medieval Indian literature. Thank you.